Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2118. This week on Cars Yeah, we're celebrating the Concours at Pasadena. It takes place August 11th and 12th. It's an event that kicks off Monterey Car Week. This year, they'll be celebrating Ferrari's 75th anniversary. To learn more and get your tickets, go to PasadenaConcours.com.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Salinas, Monterey, California. You know what that means. With a very special guest by the name of Richard Renard. Richard, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I'm ready, Mark.
You are always ready because you're a past racer. You're a guy that loves cars. You're so involved in so many events in your area. But before I give you a proper introduction and we talk about your business, about your involvement with the Laguna Seca group, and of course the Pasadena Concours, what's one little thing that most people may not know about you, Richard?
Well, I think especially since I'm beyond being a young guy and had, a lot of West Coast racing back in the 70s, probably most people don't realize that our family, from a business, first nonprofit point of view, but then a business point of view, are deeply engaged in providing homeless solutions in housing, campuses, and things.
Well, we're going to talk about that because I really would love to know more about that and share that with our listeners. But you got such a fascinating history. And I'll tell our listeners, most of the time when I have guests on the show, I've never even spoken to them. First time we talk is the first time we talk, but I think we spoke for almost an hour before we started the show.
Yeah.
Richard and I, with our racing backgrounds, with historic racing, we know a lot of the same people. So this is the fun part of my job, is creating new relationships with people that feel like old friends, which is what you feel like today, Richard.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let me give you a proper introduction. Richard Renard is the CEO of Rapid Program Management, known as RPM Team, a firm that applies critical disaster response experience to expedite time-sensitive projects. He has spent over 40 years in the automotive industry and 20 years in manufacturing with an expertise in aluminum structures. His focus today is on the nonprofit sector, as he mentioned, partnering with cities to help come up with solutions for the homeless. Richard's past includes 17 years as a club and pro racing driver. He is also the executive director of the venerable Laguna Seca Raceway Foundation that exists to raise funds for the development of the Laguna Seca Recreational area. Appropriate, giving his first race he attended as a boy was Laguna Seca way back when, in 1957. RPM is a sponsor as well of this year's Concours at Pasadena. We'll be back in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsors. So give them a little love. They're the reason our lights are on here, and we'll be right back. The most damaging thing to your vehicle's interior is the sun. Harsh UV rays damage your interior over time. They crack your dash, they fade the colors, and the heat makes getting into your favorite ride downright unbearable. My friends at Covercraft have the perfect solution for you. Their quality-made sunscreens are easy to use, take seconds to install, and protect your vehicle while parked in the harsh sun. They fold up easily and store away for those times you don't want to use your car covers. I have one for every one of my vehicles, and you should too. They come in a variety of colors and options, feature an accordion design that makes unfolding and folding them for storage a breeze. Want to give the gift that keeps on giving? Buy sunscreens for all your family members and friends. They're quality made and custom fit for almost any vehicle you may own. Check out covercraft.com for a huge number of styles, colors, and options. And I've got a really cool deal for you. If you use the code YEAH21, YEAH21 at covercraft.com, they'll give you 10% off. You can thank me. That's right, 10% off with the code YEAH21. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. Most people don't think about their collector car insurance until their annual premium becomes due. Well, why wait and see if there are better options for your beloved rides? I didn't. Did you know if you change carriers before your policy runs out, your insurance company has to refund you the unearned portion of your policy premium? I did my homework, I shopped around, and I found American Collectors Insurance. They've been protecting collector vehicles since 1976. I encourage you to call my friends at American Collectors Insurance. Ask them about their agreed value policy. And if your collector vehicle is on your regular auto policy, you will be shocked at the savings, not to mention the assurance, should something bad happen to your ride, that you'll get what your vehicle is actually worth. Give them a call today for a quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. Tell them you're a friend of Mark Green at Cars Yeah! American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Automotive enthusiasts just like you and me. That's American Collectors Insurance. Give them a call today. So, Richard, let's dive a little deeper into the corner, something you've done many times in your race car. I'd like to start by talking about RPM Team, your company, because this is a wonderful venue. How did this whole thing come about? What is it that you guys do to help people that are homeless and need a place to live? And then we're going to talk more about Laguna Seca Foundation, because I wasn't aware of this group and all the things that you guys do there. But let's start with RPM.
Well, it started, my youngest son is a filmmaker by trade, but he loves the deal. He loves business. And so as he left, he went to San Francisco State, and their film school, did the 4 years and 4 years, came out as one of their top guys. But he just started getting into cold calling businesses, the bull rings, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he eventually went to work for a Canadian company called Sprung. It's a family name. It's like a spring that sprung. And they build these tension fabric buildings for an amazing number of genres. And so he began to work with that. And from that, he inherited some clients who were using these facilities for what we call congregate housing for our unhoused guests. And so he did that. And after probably about 5 years, he became the number one account exec for Sprung internationally, just out of the San Francisco office. And so through a couple of other situations, he got to a point where he said, Dad, we need to start this business. And what he had done is he had pulled together, and I don't know of anybody else that was doing this, so I'm going to be a proud dad and said, he kind of developed this process where he was bringing the client, which could be a city, could be a county, could be a state, could be a nonprofit, and with all of the architectural needs, all of the engineering needs, all the disciplines, and then the construction needs, where one of our terms is we take people from dirt to turnkey. Well, lots of people do that, except we do it it could be in a matter of weeks to a matter of months.
Wow.
Where we're housing, whether it's people or whether it's an endeavor. My son, David, ended up filling a need for Elon Musk. A lot of people have seen on 60 Minutes where Elon Musk was having trouble with the robots in his Fremont factory on the Series 3. And so he contacted Sprung. That was because David was out of San Francisco, and David built almost 1,000-foot long, 150-foot wide tension building in somewhere between 11 and 17 days, and they were up and running.
My gosh. Okay, now I have to ask the question, because having grown up with a dad who was an architect, and how do you, I could kind of get the idea of how you build it fast, but how do you work through the bureaucracies of government and codes and permits, and how do you get around that?
You're looking for certain expedition or expedite something. And first off, everything we do is pre-manufactured. So a Sprung, even though it comes in boxes, is still pre-manufactured. So if you're looking for something very simple, whether it be an airplane hangar or a warehouse, or in Mr. Musk's case, an assembly line,
mm-hmm.
They put it on a parking lot. They lasered it and the assembly line in, and they began to, use human assets on a 24/7 basis. And they raised the production of the S from like 350, 500 a week to 3,500 and now 5,000 a week. So, but where it speeds up is everything we do is code compliant. So we're never abrogating a code. So now it becomes, how fast can we move through the permit process? Now, something like an airplane hangar or manufacturing may be, you just got to get in line and go through what all developers have to go through. But when we build a homeless campus where we're using both all of the social services are on site, plus congregate living, bathroom, showers, laundry, storage, animal runs, all that kind of stuff. We're looking for some relief in speed, not against codes, but to maybe relief in speed to permit, or even in relief for permit costs, because we're looking at a real human catastrophe in the homeless arena. Lots of cities, lots of counties have joined the fight in providing waivers to money and waivers to time. Fast track it. There's the word.
It's tremendous. What a cool deal, especially doing that with your son, and definitely a proud dad moment.
Well, we have 2 sons in it now.
Well, even better. The family affair.
Yeah, 2 of our 3 sons are fully in it because David's next older brother took his place at the Sprung office out of San Francisco.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, so we've got 2 of them in there.
It's tremendous. Well, hats off to all of you for what you're doing. It's absolutely tremendous. Laguna Seca Foundation. Back to a Cars Yeah focus here. I'd love for you to share more about what that is, what you guys do, and congratulations for your role there, I guess I should say, executive director. I don't think they could have picked a better guy. What's the Laguna Seca Foundation all about?
Well, first off, because of various things and wanting to make sure that everybody understands that nobody takes a salary out of the Laguna Seca Raceway Foundation, I'm considered the director at large.
Okay.
I mainly gab with people. That's my role now. All the administrative duties are done by the board members. Mm-hmm. All the fundraising are done by the board members. And every cent that comes into the foundation goes into either a specific project at the track or an enhancement of a project to assist the County of Monterey and current management. So I never knew this existed either. I had a call in, you get my time right, late of one year, probably 2007. I got a call from a friend of mine who is the Dan Baldwin, the executive director of the Community Foundation of Monterey County. And he said, "Hey, Dick, thanks so much for the work you've done with some of the nonprofits." Because I'd been more and more getting involved with nonprofits in general. Over a number of years, I probably served about 12 distinct entities at, different levels, different times. And he said, "Hey, would you be interested in a part-time position as executive director of the Laguna Seca Raceway Fund?" In those days, it was called Fund. And I go, "Yeah, I guess." What? I'd never even heard of this thing.
Yeah.
And he threw two names at me. One was Carl Anderson. The other one was Ken Schley. Many people know him as Ken Schley. And Kenny and I used to race Super V against each other back in the day. And I'm going, well, yeah, absolutely. And it took a while for us to everybody get in a room. So there was the addition of Bill Reichmuth, who was president. No, Kenny was president at the time. And so I sat down with Ken and with Carl and with Bill and just had a wonderful afternoon. And so they said they would put my name forward. And then I sat down, because being a nonprofit, you've got to be voted in by the board. And so we had good majority of the board, and I got voted into, to be the executive director. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things, I really have done 2 major things. I changed the name, I proposed the name change to Laguna Seca Raceway Foundation. Number one, it rolls off the lips easier.
Yeah.
Just, those 3 syllables stop people from going, huh? What do you do?
What did you just say?
And number 2, our accountant was in Fresno. I mean, that's 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away, especially you're way out in the peninsula. So we brought it in-house to one of the noted accountancy firms here in both Salinas, Monterey. And then I began to look at, I spent my first year just really understanding, okay, well, we have this thing, and what do we do with it? And began to try to understand who's our clientele and how do we approach people to raise funds. What was interesting is going backwards into the Laguna Seca Raceway. It was founded as a 501c4, which is not very popular number, because it's something we all could write Laguna Seca Raceway or WeatherTech Laguna Seca Raceway. We could all write them a check. The problem is you won't get a tax benefit. Mm. So what the board did back around 1999, we've got some paperwork that goes back into the late 90s. They began to create, it went through series, different names, Scramp Improvement Fund, and then eventually Laguna Seca Raceway Fund. And they created it as a 501c3. That way you could donate money, and that way you would get a tax benefit from it. And so in the early days, the Laguna Seca Raceway Fund built the scoring tower, expanded bleachers, built the communications facility, which nobody knows about. It's way up on the top of Andretti Hairpin, the now Andretti Hairpin, built the cruising cafe and some other things like that. And then when the political climate got a little notchy, the board just became very quiet. And so what we've been doing the last couple of years is really coming back into the public eye. We've had a large presence at the Rolex, which we will again this year. We had a large presence at Velocity International. We've added some tremendous board members to a board that just has given their lives to it. And unfortunately, we lost Ken Schley here the other day, and so that's saddened our board. Yeah.
Wow.
We're really chartered to improve the track. I mean, one of the original words was the Scramp Improvement Fund, and that's a very viable statement of management at that time to be able to solicit funds, give a benefit if you need it, and be able to put that money toward improving the track. Laguna Seca is one of those, probably, what are there, maybe 4 places around the world where you have a government and a private entity that own and operate a track. In this case, County of Monterey owns lock, stock, and barrel. They own everything. And so we've been going through a number of managers. We seem pretty settled right now with the A&D Norwegia Group. And so we're getting ready at the end of this year to shut the track down from November to April, to pave it, to begin to build a new start-finish bridge. So there's a lot of effort. We've got some plans that we've promoted and proposed to the county, and so we're always in that negotiation and to try to, quite frankly, build trust between the competitors, the participants of any event at Laguna Seca, and management and the county. It's this troika that has to really come together in a belief that we can all work together without some of the nonsense that's gone on before.
Walking a tightrope, sounds like, in many ways. Laguna Seca is just one of those places that has kind of been around forever, but the delicate balance between how it's run and the government and people and everything is one of those things that you're just like, oh man, just don't blow this thing. Just keep it going.
Well, and I think the cachet value is very, very high. Road and Track, if I can say that name, Road and Track did a survey of their readers as to your favorite, road racetrack in the United States. In fact, it might have even been racetrack in the United States, because I know Indianapolis was in that survey. Laguna Seca was number 1.
Wow.
And if you go around the world, and you ask people, name your 5 favorite road racetracks, and Laguna Seca is generally there. In fact, one of our county supervisors, he's going to be leaving at the end of this term. John Phillips was in Italy he was telling me about 3 years ago or so. They're way out in the country. Nobody, they may not even have TV out there. And they were talking with somebody and saying, "Where are you from?" We said, "Well, we're from Monterey." And the guy goes, "Oh, Laguna Seca."
Yes.
It just shows you the value of the track. And when we had the FIM motorcycle races, now we have the Superbike and of course, the original Historics and now the Rolex. We draw people from all the speaking continents.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah. And we're not talking about just spectators. We're talking about participants.
Oh, yeah. It's just a wonderful venue. That's where I got my historic racing license, was at that track. Loved it. Raced on that track. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place. And I also want to talk a bit about, of course, the Pasadena Concours. RPM, your company, is a sponsor. Rick Barnett's going to be, well, he was a guest yesterday actually on the show, but he's been on the show before. It's a wonderful way to kick off Car Week. RPM involved in this. Can you talk a little bit about your love for the Pasadena Concours?
Well, it stems first from loving cars. So, like a lot of guys, we've got some car projects here. 3 are done, 3 aren't. And especially with the starting up of, we started RPM in April of 2020. So that shows a little bit about the logic we carry here at the house. and so the 3 projects that we want to complete have been on the shelf, but we have 3 nice fun cars, 2 of which we've shown at the concours, and the 3rd we ran on what's called C2C or Coast to Copperopolis tour last year in another one of the cars. So those were just a lot of fun. But Rick and the Pasadena board and a lot of the owners of the Pasadena houses, properties and things, love cars. And for most of your listeners that are familiar with WeatherTech Raceway, the Laguna Seca, we're direct next door neighbors. In fact, there's a road that just runs between the 2 properties. So it's really a natural place to start everything. And Rick is, there's a one, it's a used up term nowadays, but there is a Renaissance guy who's deep into the art world, loves cars, loves Laguna Seca. So we've been as the foundation, we've been really building a relationship with the concours at Pasadena. And for us, I was there originally just as, the fly on the wall foundation guy.
Right.
But then we saw a value as to who attends. And what we're looking for as RPM, we're not looking necessarily at all for money. We're looking for influence. So if there is somebody who can influence a city council member, there's somebody that can, a county supervisor, the governor, whomever, we're looking for influence to be able to present our story for the tragedies that we have in homelessness. And so for all of that, we've put, some of our money into the concours, and we've gotten some interesting responses. So it's been fun and just tremendous people, especially the tour. The tour was an utter blast. And meeting such, there were a lot of Ferraris in this tour because Ferrari was the focus. And I've never met Ferrari guys like this. These guys drive the bejeebers out of their cars. There's one guy that's got over 200,000. I don't know. It's either 218 or 280, some crazy number. He's got this bright yellow 355 and he tracks it and he just, but they're all that way. They're not trailer queens.
Yeah. I had a guest on the show here from Seattle that's just went over 100,000 miles on his car. Yeah, he just, these things are meant to be driven. In the old days, driving a Ferrari like that might have been a bit of a challenge. But nowadays, they're very reliable vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they really are.
It's cool. Well, we'll take a short break, thank our sponsors. We come back. I want to talk a little bit about challenges, which I'm sure you've been up against, maybe mentors, and we're going to talk about cars too. So sit tight, keep the seatbelts on, and we'll be right back. You listeners know I've been into car care my entire life. I am so excited to team up with AutoGeek in 2022. AutoGeek.net has been a leading source of auto detailing products, accessories, and expert knowledge for more than 20 years. What started in 1997 as a mail-order catalog company has grown into a multi-website based e-commerce store that they are today. With a large online presence on its own website featuring close to 100 different brands, AutoGeek has grown to be the largest car care retailer in the country. AutoGeek's wholesale program serves accounts in over 30 countries, and its retail sector ships worldwide. Go to AutoGeek.net for the best product selection on the internet today and their stellar technical support. AutoGeek.net. It's where I go for all my detailing needs. That's AutoGeek.net. Did you know that less than 3% of all automotive technicians in the United States are women? You may not be surprised, but you should be concerned because our country is facing a massive technician shortage right now. Skilled, qualified techs are in high demand, and we need young women and men to consider these careers as a viable path to a fulfilling life. I've interviewed hundreds of women in the automotive sector here on Cars Yeah, and I know that women make great techs. That's why I support the nonprofit TechForce Foundation and its Women Techs Rock initiative to ensure women see themselves in the profession, the industry, and the workforce. Learn more at techforce.org today. Linkage. It's a new quarterly publication and website that covers the automotive market, driving, restoring, collecting, and discovering your passion for motor vehicles. Linkage is about experiences, opinions, and values. Linkage is an actual informed, reasoned opinion based on first-hand experiences. A talented linkage team covers the automotive world, the people who share your passion and mine, smart, considered, rational, and experienced opinions, ones you can learn from and grow. That includes our passion that drives auctions and the collector car market. So come with me and join us on this journey. And be sure to use the code CARSYEAH when you subscribe, and they'll give you $10 off. Boom! Linkage, geared for the automotive life. Subscribe today at linkagemag.com. So we are back. So, Richard, I want to talk a little bit about, I have what's called the challenge question. This is a question I ask all my guests, a huge challenge that you've gone up against in life. This could be something personal, could be something business related, could be something on the track. Doesn't really matter. The real point of this question is a huge challenge that taught you a very, very valuable lesson. So take us on a little bit of a rough ride.
Well, I think the biggest challenge we had is I had been with my dad. We were building our own cars. We were building in Formula V in those days, and then we evolved into Super V. So he was an engineer, a noted engineer in manufacturing, and he loved cars. He raced boats. He raced Model Ts. He was a crazy guy. Everybody knew him as Pop. And so we had, out of the 3 Formula Vs that we built, the 3 models, 2 of them were clean sheet, where they were just out of his mind. He designed them and we built them. We also built engines, and we evolved to a point where we could build complete cars, and we could do everything on a 4-cylinder Formula V or Porsche motor, except for crank and rods. We could do everything, not cam. We always used the long cam. And so we were doing that business. And then my dad passes in 1980, which was a big shock to all of us, because he was our specialist machinist. He was our engineer. He was our designer. Everybody would go to him and, hey, what do you think about this? And we were an open book. We didn't have any secrets. If somebody wanted to use my engine, I'd give him my engine. Go get another one. And so we had this nice little business. It allowed us to buy a house and be debt free other than a mortgage. We had 2 sons at this time. And so we, everything was going good. And when Dad passed, I had a couple of gentlemen kind of came in and sort of took a couple of his roles in our business. One was Clark Anderson, the Porsche 356 expert. He became my machinist. And so at the same time, I had sold 90% of the business to Dan Davis of Victory Lane.
Oh, Dan, yeah.
I've known Dan since I was in high school.
Wow.
Because my dad and I used to go to what was called Formula Racing Association back in the late 60s. It was a group of all just single-seat race car guys. Our meetings were up in Palo Alto in those days. And so, I just knew Dan for a long, long time, and he thought he was buying a break-even business, and he thought his business was just storming. And then we entered 1981, and in 1981, everything stopped.
Yes, one of those recession things. Yeah.
Yeah, guys were making money, but they weren't spending it. So all of a sudden, I didn't have 4 or 5 motors to do at the beginning of the year. I didn't even have a set of heads. So we were struggling, and Dan all of a sudden found a new business venture that looked like it was going to be shot to the moon, and he was struggling a little bit. And so for the next 3 years, 81, 82, and 83, it was really a struggle for us. I mean, we were on food stamps. We had people putting gas in our car and food on the doorstep and all that kind of stuff. And so finally, and another great pal of mine was Don Wester. the famous Porsche dealer and racer. So he and I had been talking for almost a decade, just as friends. He was just 45 minutes south of us. And so at one point he goes, hey, let's start this business. We were going to develop the final 2 acres of the Seaside Auto Mall. And so I was involved with every step. It was an Iacona design building and all of that. And so we were literally over Labor Day weekend, his banker convinced him not to do that. And so it was the first time in my life, I never knew what I was going to do. Well, we had been working with Saab Automobiles, and it was going to be a single point Saab dealer with used BMW, Porsche, Mercedes. We had the mechanics lined up. We had everything lined up. And first time in my life, I didn't know what I was going to do. And a buddy of mine, real good paint, he had me painting houses, taught me how to paint houses.
You do whatever you have to do, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then it hit me. I go, I really like the Saab automobile. I mean, it's a real safe thing. It's fun to drive, but it was just a neat little piece. So I ended up calling up Saab and I said, hey, would you want me to go to work? And he goes, well, I can think of some places we could put you right now. So about a month later, I found myself up in your neck of the woods. We decided to live in Kirkland, Washington, because there were more Saab dealers in the state of Washington and Oregon than anywhere else. I also had Alaska, Idaho, and Montana. I had 5 states, largest geographical area of the country for Saab, but I only had, somewhere it ranged between like 19 and 21 dealers at different times that go up and down. And so we had to leave the state of California to find work. And so for us, it was just a crazy deal. And we thought, okay, well, maybe we'll get to go back to the Bay Area. We had a house that we just rented, or maybe we can go to LA, or maybe we go back to Orange, Connecticut. We don't know. Or just let's ride this thing out, because racing evidently isn't going to pay it anymore. And so then a couple of years later, Don Wester called and said, hey, let's get into racing.
Yeah, things finally turned a little bit.
Yeah, so we came back down to California. We missed San Jose, drove right through it and settled in Salinas. And we were the first team to sign up for what was called the American Racing Series, which became Indy Light.
Oh, my goodness.
And,
wow.
And the problem with it in those days is similar to today. You're in a terrific series. It just was a wonderful series, except it ran about $700,000 to run it. You could really only generate about $100,000 of sponsorship unless you had a paying driver, and we never did. So that one didn't last long. Because Al Holbert was a friend that I'd met through Don Wester. I ended up going back to work for Al for a little bit on the IndyCar, just behind the scenes, just building stuff and helping with the setup. And Al bought our trailer and all that, and Bruce bought our tractor. And so from there, that season was up, and now all of a sudden I'm not in racing anymore, and had to find, another line of thing to do. And I ended up working for a small company that we were able to make into a decent sized company down in Salinas, where we built light duty equipment for trucks and vans. And it was all out of aluminum extrusions and aluminum sheet, which we didn't do much aluminum extrusion work in racing, but a lot of aluminum sheet, as you all know, and aluminum castings. And so it was a great. I did that for 21 years, and that ended. I kind of came out of that in 2010, and had already been working in a lot of nonprofit areas, and went full-time nonprofit.
Wow, a lot of moving and bobbing and weaving and pivoting. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is. And just to make sure everybody's clear, RPM is not a nonprofit company. It's a for-profit company. We're an LLC. So, but we came out of, I had begun to be engaged with the homeless community. At the time we started RPM for about 20 years. We'd been feeding the homeless. And so it just was a natural transition to do this full time and actually provide a pathway to become successful in society.
You talk to young people these days, and we talk about, like, right now, things are a little little spooky out there in the finance world and investment world and all that. And I look at like my kids and I'll say, hey, I've been through like 4 or 5 of these now. So, this happens.
Yeah.
Just have your savings set aside and your landing pad set up and ride it out because this too shall pass. But I remember that time period back in the 80s.
Even in the 70s. We never knew, my wife and I, we didn't know we were in a financial downturn. We didn't even know that. It wasn't until we hit 81 that we ever experienced a financial downturn. Then you hit the real estate adjustment of 94 and the communication one of 2001 and on and on.
Oh yeah.
So now we just go
cycles.
Now we're a little more burnished by the marketplace and
prepared is the key.
You shuck and jive to be able to try to maintain.
That's what you do. Hey, let's talk about one special vehicle in your life. One car that really stands out. What would that be?
Well, I think the funnest car we had, because we ran it for a long time, was our Super V. It became very successful. When I was a young Formula V driver, I would help a guy named Frank Schulteis, who was a well-known tech guy on the West Coast, and maybe even nationally, certainly at the runoffs. And so one night he asked me to help him on tech, and this would have been, I think, 71. Yeah, I want to say 71. And so I was teching, and you don't meet anybody, but you get to hang out. And I was hanging out with the Super V guys because that's why Frank wanted me there. I knew something about VW, and I got to engage both Tom Davey and Tom Reddy, the West Clock Lola Super Vs. And so that was kind of fun, and seeing these guys and seeing the cars, and they certainly were a step up on Formula Fords in the idea that they had more horsepower, but they had, a little wider. They had a 6-inch wide wheel versus a 5.5, and they just had a 4-speed, and all of that kind of stuff. And in those days, there were no wings, nothing. So in 73, Dan Davis got a sponsorship on the come, as it were, with Cronus, and he went out and bought the ex-Tom Reddy car. Now, Tom was still driving, and I can't remember if Tom Davey was. I apologize, Mr. Davey. But so we got this car. And first thing my dad does is he looks at the rear suspension. He goes, "Oh, that's not right." And so he ends up changing the front trailing arm mounts and stuff like that. And so we got into this deal, and we were partnered with Stephen Griswold Company, and Stephen had been trying to get us to go vintage racing forever. He goes, "Stop trying to be a professional racer. Come over to the vintage side. It's so much more fun." We didn't. We kept trying to be professional racers.
Sure.
So we got into this car. So our first season were the 3 West Coast professional races. So we had the Lola, the Cronus Lola Super V, and Stephen had a Tui. And Stephen really taught us about graphics. I mean, big giant numbers and the cars. So his was 13, mine was 31. And so the first race, I started toward the back of the pack, and I finished 4th. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. And we had a real shot at finishing 3rd, but I improperly welded the exhaust, and one exhaust pipe fell off.
Uh-oh.
So we were running on kind of, the sort of 3 cylinders. But it was a real interesting deal. And then that car began to evolve, because as guys that had the money to go out and buy new cars each year, we just had the one car. So 73, it was just the stock car, the stock Lola, 6-inch wheels. We did have because they did allow us to use the disc brakes in the back. We put disc brakes on the back. But Elliott Forbes Robinson cleaned everybody's clock because he ran drum brakes on the back. One of the things, besides being Elliott. But the drum brakes were lighter, and you didn't need all that braking prowess at the back end of the car. You needed it at the front. So Elliott he became a great race mentor for me. He was just a great guy, and he is a great guy. And so anyhow, we ran that 74. They gave us kind of a little ability to have a duckbill spoiler back there. They gave us 8-inch wheels. And then in 75, we could run a wing. We got a GRD Formula 3 wing. It was real small. We didn't run anything on the front. We just lowered the nose, and we just kept evolving the car. And we'd have guys like Gary Wheeler come by, and he'd look at the car and he goes, "Why are you putting your oil coolers where they are up front?" I go, "My dad." And he goes, "That's the most perfect place to put them." What you just did. And so we get affirmation like that. And so we ran that car from 73 through 77. And it was a delight car to drive. It was nimble. You really steered it. Formula V's, you don't steer. It's kind of like a lean and catch. And I remember I had run like 5 professional races with the Super V, because Super V left the SCCA and went over to IMSA for a few years. So we're hanging out with the IMSA guys, which was a lot of fun. And so after about 5 of those races, I got back into my old Super V for 2 more races and came out of the pits at Laguna Seca, went down to the old turn 2 and almost spun out, because you steer the Super V because you're sliding it and, you're getting a reasonable amount of lock on the wheel, where a Formula V, you hardly move your hand. And so I'm not one of those guys that could really transition quickly. Best guy I ever saw in my day transition quickly was the late Bob Lazier. He was a master. I watched him at Road Atlanta, I want to say 71 maybe. Yeah, 71. I watched him get out of a Formula V, run the length of the pits, and jump into a March Formula B car and go out and storm the field. I mean, he was amazing at being, and there's lots of guys that can do that. I'm not. Thomas Merrill, our board chairman's son, is one of those guys. I needed at least half a session to figure out where am I when I'm driving, because this isn't working.
Right.
But the Super V was really a lovely car, and it was really fun to drive. And we had done a lot of stuff. We made it a semi-monocoque car. We changed my dad in the suspension change at the back. We were able to get 0 toe change in the back over 5 inches of travel. And we changed the front steering as far as what we were allowed by rule. And we were able to get it down to about 64th of toe change over, again, about 5 inches. Because these cars moved a lot. They had pretty soft springs. We did. Elliott springs were pieces of concrete. I mean, you couldn't even push his car down. But yeah, it was just a great car. We won a lot of races with it. Won a couple of championships with it. Went to Atlanta with it, and Reeves Calloway snaked me for 4th, and I got 5th. But it was fun. It was fun being back there in that car. So it was a well respected car. We just kept running it. We didn't have anything else that we had to make it competitive, and it was very competitive. So that's my most favorite car.
Yeah, sounds like it. So you mentioned you love touring. I'm going to enable you to go on what I call an ultimate drive today. I'm going to buy you any car in the world that you can go on a tour in or a road trip in. You can take anybody you'd like, even somebody who's passed, and you can drive anywhere you'd like. What does that ultimate drive look like for you?
I'm so stuck in what I call California, which is really Northern California, because we sort of write off where you're from as being Southern California. Sorry, folks. And I think my favorite tour, I can't even say one. I would be all the back roads up to Lake Tahoe, or Highway 1 from Mill Valley all the way up into Washington. Would be the tours. Cars, oh my gollies. You even prepped me with that question, and it would have to be a roadster. It'd have to be a 2-seat roadster. So like the new Ferraris and the Corvettes and stuff, those are out. I would love to go back to my first real car, which was my dad bought when I was in 8th grade, and it was a 1955 Corvette, a real V8. Only this one had a 4-speed when we got it, and that was a car that I got to autocross in starting when I was a junior in high school. He let me autocross it because we basically used all the competition parts over the counter. We had center metallic brakes on it. We had everything on that thing, and it was fast. It was real light, but we ended up restoring it, so it really was a beautiful car. And something like that.
Yeah.
An older Corvette 2-seater. You had the trunk back there up through 62, so you could actually carry stuff. Once you got into the 56, my dad then went out and bought a 57. So you had to roll up windows, locking doors. So yeah, as rough and bumpy as those things were, I probably, I'm such a history buff on cars of my era. I don't know a whole lot about the 30s, but I know a lot about the 50s and 60s and 70s and stuff. So probably a Corvette, probably cool. any of the solid axles, probably, and because I'd want my wife to come with me, it would at least have to have a reasonable working top and a roll up windows. So that lets out all the 53 through 55s, because those were terrible. They had side curtains and horrible tops, and and not door handles on the inside. It looked like somebody Frenched the whole car, but that's the way they came new. And so yeah, it'd have to be like 57. It needs to be, even though I had fuel injection once on our car, I'd rather keep it with carburetors and a little easier for me to work on. I can adjust a Rochester injector, but I don't know enough about it to fix it.
Yeah. How about a great book you'd like to share with our listeners?
One of the things that I got from my dad was Lawrence Pomeroy's The Grand Prix Car. And it was a series of 2 books that Lawrence finished. And then he was doing the third when he passed, and LJ, I don't never get all his letters right, Setright finished it. So it's a 3-volume set. And I gave that one to my youngest son. My youngest son's the car guy. The 2 other guys, they like cars, but it gets them from A to B. But he is a real car guy. And so I gave him those sets. But that's a wonderful set of books. I don't know what they'd cost to buy nowadays. My dad was a real Anglophile, so he'd be buying all this stuff. We used to get motor and auto car and things like that out of Britain. And so he began to buy these things, and they have these huge fold-out phantom pictures, where you can see all the guts of a car, and all the way back from, the earliest Grand Prix cars, what was considered a Grand Prix car, like the Peugeot or the Fiats, and all the way up until around, I think Setright finished around 67 or 68. So from a car point of view, that's my favorite books. Sorry, but my favorite volumes.
First time those have been recommended here, so that's a new one, which I love. Richard, you've taken us on a fun ride today, and I'd love to ask you, before I let you go, for some parting words of wisdom, inspiration, maybe a mantra or a success quote you could leave us with?
Well, I think 2 things. For me, from a car point of view, my center has been Laguna Seca. I got to watch Pete Lovelady win the first race. My brain got fried on knowing this is what I had to do when I watched the Scarabs of Day and Revent Lowe and the Ferraris of Ginther and Von Neumann the next year in the October race of 58. And it was the first place I ever worked as a volunteer for the SCCA. It was the first place I raced as a licensed SCCA driver. It was the last place I raced as a SCCA FIA rated driver in Can-Am. It was the last job I ever had with racing, because I worked with Al just into the introduction of the Porsche IndyCar in '87. And now to come back as being associated with the track and associated with the foundation, for me, that's just real special time. And the track is always at risk, because it is the 5 county supervisors that declare its ultimate victory. And we want to see the track raised to the value that the participants experience driving it. But we want to see it raised to the value of, being at Monaco, being at COTA, being at now at Silverstone, not the way it was back in the 60s, but we're still stuck back there. Mm-hmm. The track is, from an amenity point of view, it's really still stuck back in the early 60s when Moss and Graham Hill and Jim Clark and Bonnier and Phil Hill and Gurney and, A.J. Foyt and Parnelli Jones, when those guys raced really early on, the amenities have never changed in any kind of a cohesive way. And that's what we want to see happen, because the county now realizes that, the AT&T Pebble Beach, Laguna Seca, the rodeo, the air show, these things bring an immense amount of money to the county that is used to benefit the citizens. And we want Laguna Seca to be primary in benefiting the citizens of Monterey County and benefiting all who come to enjoy this, not just the track, but the ambiance of the whole region. There's 40,000 acres of viticulture in Monterey County. It's huge. There's, and everybody knows about Salinas and lettuce and all that, and everybody knows about Monterey and the value it brings. Guys love coming to Monterey, just as Monterey, Carmel, and Pebble Beach, and all that entails. And now you've got this track. And so there's always a lot of rumors and innuendos and going on, but the track produces a tremendous amount of fiscal viability. But we want this thing to really be the number one racetrack in the world. And the guys on our board absolutely believe it and are working hard toward it. And so that's why I'm still hanging out with these guys. I mean, I love the place. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to drive. It's actually, I've never raced on the new track. When I started racing there were no guardrails. You could crest turn one and see the bridge.
Yikes.
We had hay bales. It was kind of, you look back now and people probably really thought we were crazy.
Yes.
But it remains one of the top driving experiences worldwide, even with the new configuration. You just got more turns.
Exactly.
So it's for your listeners, if you want to be part of that, you can be part of that through the foundation.
There you go. I'll make sure I put links to the Laguna Seca Foundation and to RPM Team and, of course, the Pasadena Concours on Richard's show notes page. And remember that the Concours Pasadena takes place August 11th and 12th. It kicks off Monterey Car Week. And, of course, the Laguna Seca Racetrack is going to be hosting their historic races again this year. Last month, we had a whole week of people from the racetrack out there on the show. So go get your tickets. I'll put links to everything. Hopefully we see many of you listeners, along with Richard and I, out at the historic races this year. Richard, thank you for bringing some historic relevance to the track, sharing your life. What a fun journey you've taken us on today. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Well, I'm going to stop you real quick because drop by the Racer and Laguna Seca Raceway Foundation garages at the Rolex reunion. Well, come and meet me.
Absolutely. I'll be there too. It'll be a lot of fun. Thanks, Richard.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.